know your value and know your time is so valuable. So I think that's probably a big one, is to not be afraid to identify that and live it. And again, realize that your time is so much more valuable than any money that you can earn. Get involved in your community, your church. If you aren't yet, find that community, because that's, I think, one of God's greatest gifts is having people around you that can spur you on and encourage you in your faith journey, in your business journey, your physical journey. I would encourage you to take a Sabbath every week, finding once a week, a whole day to rest. And part of resting is getting out in nature and exercising, putting aside our work and focusing on how can we pour into ourselves, into our relationship with our family, our relationship with the Lord.
This is the Fit Investor Podcast, where we talk about how to live a more holistic life of being fit, not only financially, but physically and faithfully. We'll be joined by experts in all these areas to share their experiences and actionable and practical tips so that you can be a fit investor too. So now let's join our hosts, Cale Delaney and Brenna Carls.
All right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of The Fit Investor. I'm your host, Cale Delaney, here with Brenna Barbells Carls. And she's hiding today, so we're going to have to put one of those like smiley clown faces over her picture there if you're watching.
Yeah, pretty much what I look like right now.
But so we have a really awesome guest today. Her name is Rebekah Taylor. And Rebekah is a third-generation real estate professional, and she and her husband bought their first rental in 2012 while she was working in the tech industry, where she spent 10 years as a sales and marketing professional. After building a portfolio, she eventually left the six-figure job to pursue her passion for real estate full-time, and she became a realtor in Lynchburg, Virginia, where they live with their two kids. Rebekah's worked for two different firms as their director of investor relations. She's invested in both singular assets and fund of funds. Her portfolio consists of 437 multifamily units as an LP, 120 multifamily units as a GP, a strategic partner in a 125-bed assisted living facility, and 225 properties in a fund of fund. So lots going on. Rebekah and her husband also have a portfolio of their own properties in Lynchburg, and they provide funding for small businesses and flippers. They created tailored investments to help individuals reach their financial goals and have more time freedom to enjoy life with the people one love. And she holds a BS in public relations and an MBA from Liberty University. And in her free time, she enjoys being outdoors, exercising, reading, traveling the world with her family. And they're active in their church and enjoy serving. And so we are very excited to have you on The Fit Investor. So welcome, Rebekah.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. And I do have one edit to that. We do now have 3 kids.
I was like, man, I wonder if this bio was written.
Yeah, it's a few months old. And so we've just had our third child about 5 weeks ago.
There we go. So congratulations again.
Thank you. Thank you.
We were obviously chatting offline a little bit, and you were sharing some things with us. And just wanted to open it up to you to start off with what you shared with us as a pivotal moment in your life that changed things for you and how you view your life and your business and your faith.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting back into, I started into real estate in 2012. My dad is a big investor out of Montana. So he's been investing in real estate since 2004. And I'd been watching him for a long time, just the way that he'd grown his business and his wealth. He was a pastor for almost 30 years. And so I was able to see the challenges and the blessings with ministry, but also the hardship with financially providing for a family. There's 5 of us kids, and he got into real estate many years prior and had been encouraging us for many years to get into real estate. So it took a while. But again, we started in 2012, but just very slowly stepped into it. And so again, being in the tech world, there was a lot of hard hours, a lot of travel, a lot of quotas that I was having to meet every month, a lot of stress. And we waited a while to have kids. My husband and I were married about 8 years before we had our first. And I had a challenging pregnancy. And then towards the very end, 12 days before my due date, I ended up having severe preeclampsia and HELLP syndrome. My liver was about to rupture. And so we had a mad dash to the airport. The mad dash to the hospital. It was not the airport. We probably could have used a plane, though, because we were about an hour and a half away from the hospital at the time. And my husband drove about 90 miles an hour to get me there. And I literally was in the worst pain of my life. I remember asking God, let me either die, but save Scarlett, or put me under because I just cannot handle the pain anymore. I was in the back seat, just like my eyes rolling back in my head. And it was a really traumatic moment for my husband and I. And so we made it to the hospital, and thankfully they were able to get me under really quick. Cause again, I was just ready to go. I couldn't breathe. Like my liver was so enlarged that my organs were shutting down. internally. And so we got to the hospital and they put me under. They ended up getting our daughter out. She was healthy. She was about 5.5 pounds. And praise God, she didn't have any complications. Meanwhile, there was a lot of things happening for me that they just couldn't get my blood pressure down. I think it was up at 265 over 140/45. And so they were like, we can't believe you didn't have a stroke. Like you should have had a stroke. It's truly a miracle that you didn't die of stroke. And they went through a lot of medicine and help. And they unfortunately nicked something internally when they did the first surgery. So they had to go back in for a second surgery to close up whatever was bleeding internally. And so I just had a lot of things happen that those first couple of days of my daughter's life, I was in the ICU. I don't remember anything that first 3 days. And I was just in immense amount of pain. And so we were in the hospital for a while. It took a bit of time to heal, months of recovering to where I could go to the bathroom by myself and walk around our house or around our block. And I'm generally a pretty healthy person. I focus a lot on my health physically. And so to not be able to do these normal things was really hard. But God was so faithful in that we had, through the whole situation in the hospital, we had literally thousands of people praying around the world. My husband was getting notes from people all over, literally all over the globe that were praying for us and sending us flowers and cards and meals and cleaning our house and just doing all of these incredible things that the body of Christ, I think it has this opportunity to do in those challenging moments for people that are going through really hard times. And we just had never experienced that type of tribulation in our marriage or in our lives with health. And so it was hard, but God was so faithful and healed me. And so it was really cool to see 2.5 years later, we ended up getting pregnant again. I was terrified, so scared, but we ended up getting pregnant again and had a much more successful pregnancy that time around. And then with our third baby that we just had recently, it was the best pregnancy I've ever had. I'm 37 years old. And so it's a really great pregnancy and to feel good now. This is not where I was 7 years ago with our first. And again, I attribute it to the Lord and the way that he's just works in our lives and how he's used his people.
Yeah. Wow. That's so I'm not familiar with those disease or disorder, but like how, I guess, what is the cause? Do you know what the reason was or?
There's not really anything that they've been able to find that has caused it. And so it's just really random, could happen to anybody. I was having, the beginning of my pregnancy was pretty smooth. And then towards the end, I was getting these awful migraines and I'd take out my vision and I couldn't see. And so they don't know. And so but I didn't have it with my last two, which is again, a huge blessing. I was pretty scared that I would, but I didn't. And just, it's weird, the body, and you just never know what to expect.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's a wonderful testimony, frankly. And I love how you said you were getting prayers from all over the place and people from the local church body were coming to help you out. And just thinking about that, how did that come about? Are you guys, or at that time or now even, are you guys very active in the local church and that's the way your church is? Or was your husband reaching out to people, or how did you engage the body of Christ during that time?
Yes. So my husband actually helped start our church here in town in 2007. And so we've been a part of that community for 15 years. We moved away for about a year up to DC, but we ended up coming back. So 15 years now, we've been a part of that body of believers. He has been an elder majority of the time and then was actually the executive pastor for many years as well. So he was very involved. He is not in that role now, but he's still an elder. And so we've always been involved. And then we also have led a community group for many years, served in different capacities, like on the meals team and with the kids ministry. So we've just had some different roles and I think connected with a lot of people that way. But honestly, the other big thing I think has just been social media. He's not really big on social media, but during that time, that was one of the best and easiest avenues to communicate what was happening, where we had family all over the place, friends all over the place, our church. We could share that with them and they could see updates on here's where Becca's at right now. And so I think that really helped a lot. But I think our church too is just really focused on how do we serve each other, especially in times of need. And so we were the recipients of that, which was such a huge blessing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. And I want to talk about the family aspect a little bit more, but I want to hone in on that a little bit too, because I think in a lot of our, at least Western churches nowadays, it's maybe a bit different in smaller towns and things like that. But I think more so the churches these days are getting into that individualistic culture, just like we are in the Western world, very individualistic. And I don't think we see as much or enough of that outreach within the local church body as we really need to. And so I'm just curious, how does your church and how do you guys make that a focus and really make that a successful value of your congregation?
Mhm. I think since its inception back in 2007, that was always a focus is how can we be more generous? And that has meant a lot of times making sacrifices internally with maybe time or money, not having a lot of money from a staff standpoint, obviously enough to survive. But I think that's always been how can we give more? How can we give more? And both locally and globally. So we've sent missionaries all over the world. We go and visit, we do a lot of missions trips, both locally and globally. And so I think just something that was from the very beginning a focus for us. And then it's something that's an ongoing conversation, something that we always are talking about and trying to get people involved, giving them avenues. And everybody's strengths and weaknesses are different. Everybody's giftings are different. So how can we help them understand what their giftings are and then put them into use for the church, for the Lord? And so that's, I think, been instrumental for us is that ongoing conversation and then just pulling people in and encouraging them to get involved because there's such a great blessing in giving versus receiving. And so I think that, again, just that longevity of that's been an ongoing focus for us. And we don't let it go. We talk about it regularly and pull people into it.
No, that's great. And I think I shared this maybe on a previous one of our podcasts, but it reminded me of an example of something I heard Tim Tebow say on another podcast is that just talking about the importance of serving and how it is, as we all know, we know intuitively that to give is more blessed than to receive. But he was talking about putting in action where, and I forget the specific details, but he was really down on his life or something had happened, whether it was losing a big game or he was just really down. And somebody told him to stop moping around and go serve somebody, go do something and serve somebody. And like the next day he went to a soup kitchen and he said it just completely flipped his mentality. He would stop thinking the woe is me victim mentality that we get into. And it just really just picked him back up and brought him back to life, so to speak. And so it just reminded me of that example. And I think it's something that as we get busier and busier in our lives, have kids, we have family, we build businesses and all that stuff, we quickly, myself included, we quickly start neglecting those more important things. And one of the reasons that we had started this podcast was to try to bring a little bit of a focus back to living that more holistic lifestyle, so to speak. Not that myself or Brenna had it figured out, but so that we can learn from people like yourself on how to get back to those things that are more important. And so I'm curious with this big health scare and everything with your first child, how did that shape what your direction in life was from that point on? Were you still working the W-2 job at that time?
I was, yeah. Yep. I was working remotely for a software company in Atlanta, and I'd been with them for, I think 4 years, and I was making great money. It was a good job, great company, a solid company. I loved it. But again, the hours were hard. The travel was a little bit challenging as we started to have kids and the quotas. I was really stressed. I would literally have dreams at night about hitting my sales quotas. And my husband was like, I think you got to get out of this. This is really hard. And after maternity leave, I went back for a short amount of time. And then I started considering other options. And I found another company that I went to work for and negotiated a shorter work week. And so I just realized I was able to still make a great salary with them. It was another W-2. But I realized, hey, my time is so much more valuable than this money that I'm making. Obviously, we need money to survive, but I was able to make a little bit less, which was fine for us. Like we didn't need what I had been making before, but I was able to make a little bit less, but have more time. I only worked 4 days a week and I think at that time I was off on Fridays. So it was just a blessing to be able to have a little bit more time with a newborn. And then as time went on, we actually moved down to 3 days a week. I was able to cut my schedule back even more as we had our second. And so that for me as a mom, a working mom, I just so valued the time, but I still wanted to work. I love working. I love contributing and using my skills, but I wanted to just find a healthy balance. And so that's been something I've just realized over time. Like my time is valuable and I have a lot of skills and expertise and experience, education that I can charge a little bit more for and have a little bit more time if I choose to not spend 40 hours a week in that specific space. And so that's been a huge blessing. I encourage women all the time, hey, don't be afraid to ask. Ask if this is possible. Maybe you can work a 4-day work week, or maybe you can work 6 or 7 hours a day versus 8 or 10. There's just options out there, but you have to be bold enough to ask and realize your value, that you could do something, maybe even get as much done in a shorter time. That motivation, I think there's a lot there. So just being willing to think creatively about your time and realize your value and just what you want in your life and in your work.
Right. And how do you, and I'm sure it's still a work in progress and has changed over time, but I know, and Brenna, you can probably chime in on this as well, but I know that a lot of women have a struggle with, especially when they start having a family, in terms of, do I be a stay-at-home mom, or do I work, or is it an either, or is there a happy medium like you were talking about? What would you say to other women who maybe they are a stay-at-home mom, but they want to have a career still, or work, or build something?
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
Yeah, Brenna, I don't want to cut you off if you want to share too.
No, that's what I'm wondering, because we haven't started our family yet, and we've had trials and tribulations with that, going through it. So just hearing how you overcame that, and then through your struggles, like how you kept the faith to keep going to build your family.
Yeah. I think it takes time to figure out what's best for you and your family. I grew up with a mom that stayed home with all of us kids. My husband had a mom that worked full time. And so we saw both ends of the spectrum. Going into marriage, he always told me, hey, I will figure out a way to make enough money so you could stay home if you want to. And I appreciated that a lot. It was nice to know that he was going to do everything possible to provide for us if I chose to stay home. And I think I realized over time that's just not how I'm wired. I like, again, to be productive. I like to work. I like to use my brain, contribute financially. But it took time. Like it wasn't an immediate, I know this is the direction that I'm supposed to go. And everybody's so different. I think you just have to realize, like, some women have really a passion for being a stay-at-home mom and utilizing their skills there, maybe homeschooling. I was with a good friend yesterday that she loves homeschooling her kids. And that's just not, I'm not wired to be a homeschool mom.
Yeah.
I love that some people can do that. That's amazing. And so I think just figuring out how you're wired, how God gifted you, and then being able to utilize those gifts and talents, whether it be in the workplace or at home or a combination of both. And for me, that's been my sweet spot, is being able to do both, but in a little bit more cut back timeline. And my husband's a great partner. This morning, like, since we've had this baby, my nights are pretty rough right now. So he's getting up every morning with the other 2 kids, getting them ready, feeding them, out the door, taking them to school. And usually I do that, but he's been able to have some flexibility with his work schedule so that he can take on a little bit more responsibility right now. So we are constantly in conversation about, how do we balance this? And especially with travel, I still do travel with work now in real estate. So he's phenomenal with being able to help me balance all these different things. And so it's definitely not on my own that I'm doing this, but I think you just have to realize your giftings, your strengths, and be open to a different approach. Again, being creative with your time and realizing that every season's a little different. There's going to be seasons where it's harder, and you're going to have stressful times where you're a little overwhelmed. And I think that's part of life. I don't like to live in that space all the time.
Right.
But I think just realizing life does have seasons and things are going to change. And when I am in those stressful moments, just taking a step back and realizing, like, the Lord is my strength and I don't have to worry. He's going to get us through this. And how can we maybe outsource? Something that we've done is, in seasons, we've had some really great nannies that have worked with us. And not only are they watching our babies, but they're helping me take care of the laundry or maybe food prep. So I think figuring out, how can I outsource some things that I can't do it all. There's just no way to be able to manage it all. So being aware of my boundaries and how much I can handle, and trying not to overload myself, which I can do sometimes still. It's hard, but I think it's just a balance, and realizing there's people around you that can help. And sometimes it's okay to just realize, like, this, I can't do this. I have to say no.
And then, do you think with this last pregnancy and all that you went through, was it hard sometimes to stay on that righteous path of, you know what, fully trusting God? Because I know sometimes when we go through things, it's obviously we trust in God, but while you're going through that moment, it's like, why? So can you talk a little bit about how your faith strengthened you through the whole process, if you went through moments of questioning, and how you got past that and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we waited over 4 years to get pregnant with this one. We really didn't know if we'd have any more kids. I just didn't. We prayed a lot about it, and we didn't feel like our family was complete yet. But there was a lot of fear. That's part of why it was a 4-year gap, because I was scared after having complications, major complications with our first, and then our second. I did have a spinal leak from the tap. So I did have some smaller complications with that. I was in the hospital for 5 nights instead of as long as the first. But all that to say, I was like, man, if God wants us to have another baby, he's going to take care of me. And I don't have to worry. Even if I do have some complications, he's gotten us through the first 2. But I think also part of that was getting really healthy. Physically, I started taking a supplement years ago it's called a SIA. It's something that it's been really helpful just for my body healing. And I started taking that. I started on some other vitamins, been faithful about exercising, also just reducing my stress, finding different ways to just be able to handle another pregnancy. And so I think that was something as well, is God's grace and his peace. It's just overwhelming peace through the process. I've never experienced such a peace in any pregnancy as I did this one. And that was just a huge blessing. But surrounding myself with people that have encouraged us along the way and just been strong men and women of faith that have given us a lot of confidence that God's got this and he's going to take care of us through it.
I love that. You mentioned supplements. You said ASEA. What is that? Is that just for overall health or?
Yeah, it's ASEA. It's ASEA, and it's a drink. It's something I take every morning. I think it's 8 ounces a day. And it's called redox signaling molecules. And I am not a doctor, I'm not a physician, so I'm probably not going to explain it as well as some of the other folks that are part of that company. But basically, your body is, the way that I understand it, we've got trillions or millions of cells and they communicate with each other. And sometimes as we get older and we face maybe our health is not that good, we're not eating well, or physical health, like we're not exercising, or pollution or stress or all these factors that obviously impact us as we get older, those cells stop communicating as well. And so when they're not communicating, things break down and parts of your body just don't work the way that they should. And so after we had our second, I was experiencing a lot of weird health issues. And I don't know if that was a factor from that spinal leak, but my hands started hurting really bad one day. I was at church. I remember this. My hands, I felt like I'd been in a punching match. And my hands were hurting so bad. That lasted for about 10 months. Literally 10 months, every day of my hands hurting. And my arms and legs started tingling. I had a lot of numbness. I was getting headaches every day. I was fatigued, irritable, just a lot of weird things. I would have breakouts on my body. And I had literally like hundreds of tests done trying to figure out what's happening with my body. Like, why am I breaking down? We can't figure out what's happening. And so they tried all these things, seeing if it was MS or if it was some type of autoimmune disease, if it was like diabetes. We tried so many things and they really had a hard time getting to the bottom of it. I cut out gluten. I still don't eat gluten. And so they had a hard time identifying it. They said, we think you might still have some spinal leak from that, which had happened about a year prior at that time. And so my dad had a heart attack years prior, and he had started taking this supplement called ASEA and had just really seen a turnaround with his health. And so he encouraged me to try it. I was a little bit reluctant. It's a little bit pricey, but I was like, I'm just going to try it. I've tried everything else and nothing is working. And so I started taking it, and within a couple of weeks, my hand stopped hurting, which was just a miracle again after so long. And it's apparently supposed to help your cells start communicating correctly and just your body to function the way that it's supposed to. And so again, I don't know. I'm not a physician. I cannot explain all the ins and outs of the science. There's a lot of science behind it, but I'm happy to help if you're interested or if you'd like to learn more. I can send over information. It's just been really helpful for me. Feeling good every day. I feel like I sleep a lot better and my body is just functioning the way that it should.
Yeah. You have to check that out. I hope you have your affiliate link ready with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, I will happily share that.
So I want to dive back a little bit if we can, just to explore a little bit more of your faith journey before we jump on to some of the other topics. But so you mentioned your father was a pastor 30 plus years. So obviously growing up in a Christian household, but when did your relationship with Jesus become personal in your life? Because we know a lot of people who grow up in Christian households, even with parents that are pastors, doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to follow in the faith, or that I think you hear that a lot of people who grow up in that situation they give a testimony that they perhaps had a head knowledge of it, but didn't have that personal relationship until later on. So just curious if that was the situation, and if so, when did you transition to having that personal relationship?
Yeah. So I remember when I was probably 4 or 5 years old, sitting at the kitchen table with my dad and telling him, I don't want to go to the bad place. I really don't want to go to hell. So how do I go to heaven? And so I remember him leading me in the prayer of salvation, but I don't think I fully understood what I had done at that age. And seeing my kids now, like their minds are not quite grasping salvation. And so anyways, it was later on, I believe I was 13 years old, and we'd always been so involved in the church. We were there every time the doors opened. We were always doing all the things. And I feel like sometimes my faith was more of a checklist of all the things that we do for God versus knowing God. And so when I was 13, I was at this youth event in Denver, Colorado. It was Y2K. I think that's what it was. It was like the turn of the century, and everybody was scared that everything was going to shut down. My parents like stocked up their pantry with water and canned goods, and we were hopeful that this wasn't really going to happen. But I remember they still let me go on this trip down to Denver for this youth conference at the turn of the century. And so I was there, and I remember hearing, I think it was like Josh McDowell or somebody was speaking, and it was really powerful. And that was when I really rededicated my life to the Lord and said, I want to follow you. And so I feel like from that point forward, it was more of a relationship. I was really intentional about spending time with him on a daily basis. And again, there's been seasons of it's harder to be in the Word. It's harder to spend time praying on a regular basis. But I feel like it's always been my rock solid foundation, and it's been what's gotten us through. And then my husband as well. That's our faith is what drives us. And so I think that was probably the pivotal moment. I ended up going to a Christian college here in Lynchburg, Liberty University. And so I think having that as well, just being ingrained in the faith environment, I served in different leadership capacities at the school and was just regularly challenged. And yeah, praise God for parents that have taught me about God, and then getting to be in those different places along my journey that have pushed me more towards Him as well.
Rebekah, we need to connect off of here because I'm actually from Virginia too. I did a semester at Liberty online. I'm from Farmville, Virginia, if you've heard of that.
Yeah, that's a cute town. We have a couch from a green
front.
Yes, I love their furniture. It's so nice.
So yeah, former Virginian as well.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, let's definitely connect.
So do you have any like regular practices, or whether it's on a daily basis or what, that you do that help staying in the Word or being ever present in God's presence? Do you have any tips or things like that for our audience?
Yeah. Again, I want to go back to just seasons and realizing that seasons change. And especially for moms, when you have a really little one at home and you're not getting a lot of sleep, I think just realizing and being patient with yourself, giving yourself grace, knowing that God sees us in those moments. There's some days when I have struggled to get in the Word because we're just running from thing to thing, or I'm barely getting any sleep. And so we every morning read a devotion to our kids, and we've made that a practice. And then at night we read a Bible story before bed. And so there's some days where that's my food is like the devotional for our kids. And it's not anything that's crazy in depth, but I'm able to see God in that. And so I think that's been helpful for me in those seasons, just realizing that I think God is gracious, and He understands that we're not always going to be in a space where we can spend an hour in the morning sitting down with Him. And I want that. I certainly want that. But seasons change. But I will say I think it was 2 years ago, I went to a Bigger Pockets conference in New Orleans, and I think it was Bigger Pockets. I heard Hal Elrod, which he wrote that book, The Miracle Morning. And so hearing his like cadence for what he does in the mornings has been something that I've adapted. I love, he has a time of like meditation, and then he goes over I have my words. I should have written this down ahead of time, but he goes through I got to pull it up on my phone. Affirmations. Yep. Thank you. He goes through his affirmations every day. Then he goes through his visualizations, his savers, the silence, affirmations, visualizations, exercise, reading, and then I do scripture, but I don't know if he's doing that. But yeah, I try to go through, and again, it doesn't happen every day. And I think the seasons right now, again, I haven't been as faithful on that. But when I don't have a newborn and I am getting better sleep, I love to get up early and really practice that silence, those going through my affirmations, going through my visualization, going through exercising. Sometimes that's at a different part of the day, but then my reading, my scripture, and my prayer is spending that time is ideal. So I love that, and I've adopted that, and I want to be more faithful in it. Is we get more sleep.
Yeah, trust me, I know. Um, yeah, I'm a big proponent on the miracle mornings and getting up early and that type of thing. I started that when we had our youngest, who's now 4 years old. And yeah, just completely flipped my schedule and started doing the morning routine and all that. And that's around the same time I started the business and all those things. But yeah, that's been really critical for me in terms of, I think a big part of it is setting the cadence for your day, right? When you wake up in chaos, you're setting yourself up for the rest of the day to be in chaos. When you wake up and start out in an organized pattern, you prioritize those things that are important to you, which, for me as well is doing some type of scripture reading and meditation and prayer time and devotion time. And I think the exercise is a huge part as well. Really does help set your day up to be more productive, more relaxed, and allow you to handle the inevitable challenges that are going to come your way. And you have little ones, and just some things that are cool that are happening now with my youngest is we go to church, and he loves going to church. And of course for him, it's like a playtime at this age. He gets to see friends and play. So he loves going to church. He always asks about going to church. We pray and make it a point to pray before every meal. So he gets into that practice. And it's just funny, actually. He's convicted me a few times where we've had somebody, or we're going out to dinner, or somebody else is there, and maybe we don't take the time or stop to pray together because there's somebody there and you don't know if they're doing it or not, but he'll be the one to say, "Hey, we need to pray." Yeah,
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, man. It's wonderful.
Hard when they put you in your place and you're like,
I know. I'm just like, so that's good. And then just the other day, he's finally starting to like use the word Jesus in his vocabulary now, which is really cute. Of course, how much he understands, we don't know, but he was just drawing his little scribble pictures, whatever. And it was hanging on the fridge. And I think it was just yesterday or something. He was like, "Daddy, look." I was like, "Oh, wow, that's cute. What did you draw?" It was just scribbles all over the paper, whatever. He's like, what did you draw?" He's like, "Oh, it's Jesus." I was like, "Oh, that's great. That's really nice." And like one of his favorite songs is a Spanish version of a worship song. So yeah, he just asked for that like yesterday when we were driving to his jujitsu practice. He gave the name of the song. He's like, "I want to hear the canción." And so it's super cute. But I guess the reason I bring it up is having those conversations in your household, regardless, around the kids and that type of thing, so that it becomes a part of their vocabulary. It becomes a part of their daily practices and some of these different things. And yeah, as they're growing up, they're going to convict you.
Yeah. That's good.
Hey guys, it's Brenna Carl, CEO and co-founder of The Mortgage Shop. When I'm not spending my time searching for the best pizza in town, working out, well, because of pizza, or fighting sharks, as Kale likes to say, I spend my time educating clients on the best investment products that will help them build generational wealth and making sure their loan process is as smooth as warm butter on a piece of toast. Call us today to get started with your investment journey at 800-816-7982, or, to talk more about pizza. Talk to you soon.
But touching back to the Miracle Morning and kind of transitioning into the physical fitness part and everything, I know you mentioned that's been a big part of your life and everything. So what, I guess in your current phase of life, what does your physical routine look like? Like why is it important to you, and how does that fit into your current life?
Yeah. So I, right now, recovering from a C-section, I've been a little bit slow, but one of the big things I love to do is just get out and walk. We live in a beautiful area of Virginia, and there's a lot of history. And my daughter, my newborn, and I are getting out and walking a lot. And that has just been a really good time to just be active once recover, because I can't do a whole lot quite yet. I'm getting closer to where I can get back into some weight training. But I've never been like a bodybuilder or anything crazy, like never been a runner. I really wish I was. I love doing exercise classes. I'm a big proponent of yoga. I feel like that's just been really good for my body, stretching and also like getting into those spaces where I can rest my mind a little bit has been really helpful, and just be grateful. That's something that's when I can get alone and do yoga or go into a studio and do yoga, it's been really good. So that's something I try to do regularly. It's been hit or miss lately with pregnancy and then delivery. So my routine right now is quite different than it normally is, but something else we love to do, and it's been a little bit more challenging with kids, but it's just getting out and hiking. We've been blessed with beautiful mountains around us, the Blue Ridge Mountains and Appalachian Trail. So we get out and try to hike as much as we can, go camping. Again, that's changed with seasons, but that's been really helpful, is just being able to get out and do some training that way. And yeah, I aspire to do more on the weightlifting front. And so hopefully as I recover from my C-section, I'll be more active on that front. We have weights at home and elliptical and some different things that we use. And then if I can get into the gym, that's a bonus for sure.
So has the gym, prior to obviously having kids and giving birth and everything, but is that kind of your typical go-to when it comes to the fitness, doing the gym and weight training and that type of thing?
Yeah, in seasons, again, prior, yeah, that's where I like to be, is especially if they have childcare. If my kids are not at school, if it's on a weekend or something, then that's huge help. But I love doing group fitness classes. It's just fun to be in an environment, especially working from home. I'm alone a lot. So to me, to get out and be in a group fitness room, like doing bars, one of those different classes, is a lot of fun. My mom is an aerobics instructor, so I grew up like at probably 8 years old. I was doing those step classes with her. And that was fun. It was a lot of fun. So I've seen her. She's now 65 and she is in incredible shape. She works out every single day. I think I talked to her 2 days ago. She was going to hike a mountain. She's just amazing. And so I've seen how much that's impacted her physically, but also mentally. I think when you are taking care of your body physically, it does help you from a mental standpoint so much, as I know you know that. Yeah, I aspire to be more like her. She's done amazing balancing 5 kids and then still taking care of herself physically.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, again, obviously, just like everything else, once you, again, with the family and everything else that comes along, these things become ever more challenging to try to fit everything into your life. So you got to try to figure out what you can do that's realistic. And it goes back to why I like the miracle mornings and stuff, because you can prioritize those things in the morning and try to get them out of your way, especially if you're working a job or things like that. And that's one of the reasons I switched over, because I was still working a W-2 at that time. And again, we had our youngest at that point. And it was, if I stuck with the same schedule that I had, it was get up, go to work, come back. And then it was either a trade-off of, okay, you either come home and have dinner and go to bed, or see people before you go to bed, or you go to the gym and then it's pretty much straight to bed, right? For everyone. All right, if I'm going to continue doing this, the only time I'm going to be able to do it and actually be able to spend time with the family is to do it in the morning. So I'm not a morning person, still not a morning person,
Yeah.
but I'm going to do blue. Now even though I don't enjoy waking up, but I greatly enjoy that whole morning routine and getting it done ahead of time.
Yeah.
You know?
And I'm so thankful for modern technology, because again, it has been harder to get to the gym in this season. YouTube has a lot of, if you could see my office right now, I've got a yoga mat right behind me, and I've got a couple different YouTube videos for yoga pulled up. So when I can figure out those spaces of time, that's a lot of times I can just sit down and do 30 minutes of yoga or some other type of exercise. And it's nice to be able to do it from home with some of the different technology out there. That makes a big difference.
Yeah. And if you're in a place where you have the ability, you have some beautiful outdoors and things of that nature, then that's even better. I'm down in South Florida. We have nice beaches, but we don't have much besides water sports, not a whole lot for comfortable outdoor activities.
Yeah. Gets hot.
Exactly. I grew up in the mountains in New Hampshire and that type of thing. So I do miss hiking. I love that type of stuff. That's one of the biggest things I miss about being up there.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But yeah, doing that type of stuff, I think those types of things are great because it's easier to do when you have kids and that type of thing. You can get them involved and those types of things a lot more so than trying to get them into the gym or.
Yes. Yeah, it's a challenge. They don't always like to go with me, so we have to compromise and figure out the right balance.
Rebekah, have you been to the Smoky Mountains yet?
We have. It's been a couple years, but yes, we have done a couple of family vacations with my husband's whole family, so it's beautiful over there.
What do you like? What do you like hiking better? Curious, because like when I was in Virginia, I was growing up young there. I never took the advantage of actually going hiking and stuff, since that was like about 3 hours away from me would be like the mountainside of Virginia. So what, if you've done both or you've seen both, what do you like? Which ones do you prefer?
Ooh, that's tough. I also have Montana to compare it to, because that's where I came from. So
There's no comparison to that.
I know. It's really hard to not compare it to Montana, but I probably would say Virginia, just because I have so much more experience here. We've just done so many more hikes, so many more camping trips than the Smokies. I think are gorgeous too. I think we've been there 2 or 3 times. So haven't had quite as many experiences out in their mountains, but I know they're beautiful too. But the Appalachians, the Blue Ridge, like every year, one thing we just did a couple weeks ago is we have the Blue Ridge Parkway. So in the fall, all of those leaves change and it is just gorgeous. Like every color up there and just the mountains you can see so far when you get up high. And so that's something we do on a regular basis is go up and spend time on the parkway, go hike, go walk around. There's different areas. And yeah, I guess I wouldn't say Virginia just because I live here. It's easy.
Y'all come back to the Smoky Mountains. You let me know and I'll give you some trails that are really pretty to hike. Family friendly.
Yes. Oh, that'd be great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
That's where Brenna lives and that's where I invest. So we can get you hooked
Oh,
up.
that's amazing. It is gorgeous. So that's a great place to live.
Yeah. So why don't we talk about the business aspect in a little bit? So we know you're working the W-2 job. You were able to negotiate the shorter work weeks and everything. When did it come about that you decided to start building this real estate business and start investing? And what was the impetus for getting into that?
Yeah, COVID actually. Back in 2020, obviously the world changed and I was really stressed out of my job at the time. I'd been with that company, it was a hardware company for about 3.5 years. And it was a great company and they were good to me. I had nothing bad to say, but I was just at a point where, again, realizing my time and I was just working constantly for money. My time was just spent working. And so my husband was given a 3-month sabbatical. He was working as a pastor at the time for the church. And so he took a 3-month paid sabbatical and I left my job and we bought a camper and we traveled around the country with our 2 young kids. At the time, I think our kids were like 1 and 3 and traveled the country and just had this amazing opportunity to just rest and declutter our minds and our space. We had a small camper. It wasn't very big, but it was incredible. We rented out our house at the time and that helped support us. And we had saved up some money. Again, my husband was getting paid through that. But that was a really awesome opportunity for us to figure out, like, what do we really want from our lives? It's great to make money and we've made some good investments and we're in a good position, totally debt free. We didn't even have a mortgage. We paid off our house. And so we were in a really great position financially, but we were just trying to think through, how do we get more time? Because as we have kids, we just want to be with them more. We want to be able to experience the world and give back more, but we're so tied up in our jobs. How can we cut back a little bit? So as we started to talk about it, we're like, man, real estate's really been a great space for my dad. I've seen him he's made millions in this environment. He's done really well. He has more time freedom. He's happier. And we had, again, some rentals. We were like, maybe we should really focus on this more. And so when we came back from sabbatical, I got my real estate license and started doing transactions on that front. And then I stumbled into the passive investing world with a local private equity firm and came on board as the director of investor relations and just learned all there was to learn about, as much as I could about that world. They did fund of funds and it was an awesome opportunity. I was with them not quite a year and then transitioned over to another business doing value add multifamily. So that was their main focus. And I was also their director of investor relations. And so it was an awesome opportunity to learn different facets of the business in 2 different environments. And so I loved it. And I was like, this is really cool that we can give people the opportunity to be involved in real estate, but not have to be a landlord because I am a landlord and it's a lot of work and dealing with toilets and tenants and trash and just some of the stress that comes with that. Not everybody wants to do that. And it's a lot of work sourcing deals. It's a lot of work getting financing. There's just so many different parts of real estate investing that it's just not suited for everybody. But there are a lot of people that have great jobs and they want to put their money to work in a more passive way. And so we started to invest our own money in passive deals. And then in April of this year, launched our business, Tailored Investments. And so we partner with best-in-class operators around the country, one being assisted living. That's been a focus of mine the last few months. And just, again, finding the right opportunities for our investors so they don't have to do the work. They can put their money to work and have a majority of the benefits of real estate with cash flow, appreciation, maybe some tax benefits, the hands-off nature, just those benefits that they don't have to do as much on the hands-on active side.
Right. So I guess, how did you get that job as the director of investor relations? Like, how did that, because I guess your family had experience. You at that time, you didn't really have a whole lot, correct me if I'm wrong, a whole lot of experience in real estate. So how did you make that transition, number one, to get into that world?
Yeah. So I think it did help that we had a few rentals. We had dipped our toes on that front. And I had my license as a realtor. I think they appreciated that. But I think more than anything, it was just the experience on the sales and marketing front, even though it was totally different in the tech world. It was still a lot of those things I could apply. And investor relations is a lot of kind of customer service. You're dealing with people. So to be able to have the experience of dealing with people, inviting warm personality, somebody that could talk to people on a regular basis. I'd have some days where I talk to 12 different investors. And so to be able to understand their goals and what they're looking for and how to help them, maybe we weren't the right fit to invest with, but I could help guide them. And so I think that's probably why they hired me, is it was just that experience on the sales and marketing front, the investor or the customer service front. And then my interest in real estate, my desire to grow on the real estate front, I think helped as well.
Gotcha. And then when did you feel, or was there something that kind of sparked that, okay, I can do this on my own, and that gave you the impetus to launch Tailored Investments?
Yeah, it is something I'd been thinking about for a while. I actually had a business coach that was she had her own business, and I had connected with her actually through a podcast. I had heard her on a podcast back in January. She's a believer, and I was just so impressed with what she was doing. And I think for me, I was preaching financial freedom and independence. And here I was, though, working in a W-2, relying on somebody else. And I was like, man, I just feel like I'm not totally living. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. Like most of my immediate family are entrepreneurs. And here I am again. I felt this like conflict inside of, I want something that is ours. And how can we get to that point of having a business that we own, that we're moving the needle and getting to build into our future? And then it unfortunately came to a point with my company. It was actually totally a God thing, but they hit some pretty rough waters financially. Obviously, the real estate market has totally changed. They had a couple of bridge loans that they had to buy $1.5 million rate caps. And unfortunately, that meant me losing my job, which was really hard. It was a tough situation, but they were great to work with. They were so kind. There was no ill feelings. Like they had to really cut back all of their expenses. And so to me, it was like a God moment of, hey, it's time. I've been giving you these ideas, these passions, but let's take it and do something now that's different. And so God knew.
Yeah. So the multifamily, the LP in multifamily, GP in multifamily, and your activity as a general partner, that's through your business, Tailored Investments?
That was through my last role.
Okay. All right. And then now, more recently with the assisted living, what drew you to assisted living? What's the interest in that?
Yeah. So I love multifamily. Don't get me wrong. I think that's a great space. I just had a meeting yesterday with an awesome operator in the multifamily space, and I'm still actively investing in that. But I do think over the years, multifamily has become so expensive, so hot. It's hard to find a good deal out there. And at the events I've gone to, that's a resounding theme is we can't find deals that really pencil out and where we're making money. We're really taking a lot of risk. And I've seen that personally in some of the deals that other businesses have done around me. And so I think I have been a little bit more hesitant to invest on the multifamily front unless the numbers are just so stellar and it's maybe like a loan assumption. They're able to take on fixed debt for a really long period of time. And so that kind of was the impetus for me to consider other asset classes. And assisted living is a different flavor of multifamily. It's still providing housing for people. And I love the fact that these people are in the later years of their life and they're looking for not only quality living, but quality relationships. They're looking for a place where they can spend those years and be surrounded by people that they maybe hopefully enjoy being with. And I think that's something that with this specific group that I'm partnering with and this deal in Wisconsin, this assisted living facility, they're just doing a stellar job of really taking care of their residents and just providing that for them. And so that whole demographic, though, is set to, I've heard, I think it's double by 2060 in the United States. It's insane what is coming. There's just a huge population of aging adults, and there's not enough living facilities for all of them. I had a conversation with another operator. His mother-in-law is on a wait list in Charlottesville, which is like an hour and a half from us here in Lynchburg. And I think she was number like 257 on the wait list. And there's a $500,000 buy-in just to get into this facility. And who knows if she'll get in at number 257. It's just insane. There's just not enough facilities out there. So from a financial standpoint, I think there's a whole lot of money on that front. And that's not my only driver. I think that's important that it's a financially good decision, but there's just so much opportunity out there for this group, for this demographic, and just the growth that we're going to see in the years to come. And so that's what got me excited about it. And then again, just providing something that is a great experience and great place for these people to live. If my parents have to go into a home someday, I want it to just be the very best of the best, and that they'll enjoy living there.
Yeah. And the quote unquote silver tsunami, right? That you hear of. Prior to getting into short-term rentals, was looking into the residential assisted living with some of the Gene Garino at that time and his team with the RALA. And I never get into it at that time. But I've been thinking about it more and more as I built up an established portfolio of my short-term rentals and that business and everything, but starting to look at bigger and better things, so to speak, and things that I think are probably a lot more recession resistant type assets. And I think assisted living facilities over the coming years, for that demographic reason, are going to be one of those much more recession resistant assets. And at least from what I've seen, it hasn't quite made its way into the mainstream yet, where it's really popular, it's all hyped and that type of thing. I think it's still on a bit of the quiet side, which is good. And I like I like listening to Robert Kiyosaki, and I know he's getting into the assisted living facilities and that type of thing, but I like what he says. Look, one of these days I'm going to need one of those, so I might as well buy them now so I have one for myself.
That's good. I like that.
But I know we're running short on time, but real quick, like for somebody who's interested in exploring the assisted living world a little bit, what are some resources that you would recommend on how to dip your toes or get involved in that arena?
Yeah, I would love for them to reach out to me and we can have a conversation. I'm happy to share and answer questions. It's still something that I'm still diving into. I've just, like I said, been partnering with this group since May. And I'm happy to share my experience so far and what I've seen. I am not on the ground managing day-to-day operations of this facility. The group that I'm partnering with is doing that. So I don't in any way want to say that I'm there day in and day out, but I can tell you that this group has a solid track record. And so that's been really helpful for me in terms of partnering with them. But yeah, I'm happy to send over I have a lot of statistics. I have some great PowerPoints I can send. I don't have them publicly on my website, but I'm happy to send them over if anybody wants to connect, and we can have a quick call and just share more about it, answer questions.
Yeah. No, awesome. Well, I might be one of those people giving you a call. So
yeah,
Rebekah, I really appreciate your time, and I want to be respectful of your time. I know you got your little one sleeping there, so before she wakes up.
She's doing good. I'm really happy. Yes.
But yeah, as we close out, one of the things that we'd like to ask our guests is to, leave our audience with 3 actionable or practical tips based on anything that we've spoken about so far.
Yeah. So I think one of the first ones is know your value and know your time is so valuable. So how can you maximize it? Money aside, how can you leverage your time to the greatest good for you and for your family and for those around you that you're serving, that God's placed you in proximity with? So I think that's probably a big one, is to not be afraid to identify that and live it. And again, realize that your time is so much more valuable than any money that you can earn. Number 2, I would say, get involved in your community, your church. If you aren't yet, find that community, because that's, I think, one of God's greatest gifts is having people around you that can spur you on and encourage you in your faith journey, in your business journey, your physical journey. There's so many different parts of that. That's something that we've had such great community on the faith front. I'm now working on the business front of other believers. I have a lot of great business contacts that they may not be believers, and I love them dearly, but it's so nice when you can also have some believers on the business front as well that you do life with. And so just finding your community, finding your people, I think is really valuable, and making sure that you invest in them. And with time, it's not easy. It takes a lot of time, but being intentional with your community. And then third, I would encourage you to take a Sabbath every week. That's something that we've been very intentional about, is finding once a week, a whole day to rest. And part of resting is getting out in nature and exercising. Like, rest looks different for everybody, but putting aside our work and focusing on how can we pour into ourselves, into our relationship with our family, our relationship with the Lord. But taking that Sabbath has been vital for our health.
That's so funny. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that. It's been on my heart and my mind a lot. And I used to do that years ago. I used to really make it a point on Sundays to take that as a day of rest. And of course, that went out the wayside for a long time. And then really just these past couple of weeks, it's been really on my heart and my mind that, man, you have to start respecting that and respecting that time and creating that. Not 100% there yet, but started being more intentional, at least with making Sundays that day of rest. And God gave that instruction for a reason. So we might as well honor it.
Absolutely. And it's hard as an entrepreneur. You just have a million balls you're juggling, and there's an unending list of things you have to get done. But I've just had to realize I got to put that aside. It will be there when I get done. But if I don't rest, I will not be good for anything because I just cannot keep going at this pace. I have to have this day to rest. So I'm glad that you're figuring that out and realizing and taking the time, and you'll get there, I'm sure.
Yeah. No, so that's funny you mentioned that. And then the last question, which Brenna, she had to drop off here real quickly, but her favorite question to ask is, what is your favorite type of pizza and from where?
So I love Hawaiian pizza, and there's a really great local spot here in town that I like to get pizza from. It's called Vermont Pizza, but just the pineapple and bacon is my favorite. That's a great question.
One of the few. Excellent. Thank you again so much, Rebekah. Really appreciate your time and everything you shared. And if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Yeah, I'm very active on LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, those social sites. But my website is Tailored Investments. So my last name, Taylored investments.co. And so definitely visit my website. There's a Calendly link on there if you want to schedule some time. You can click on that, and I'd love to connect with you as well. And I appreciate the time, Kayla. It's so nice to talk to you. Thank you for the invitation to be here.
Absolutely. I appreciate you coming on. And stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, for another episode of The Fit Investor. Thank you again, Rebekah.
Thanks. Bye.